They told me to give back all company assets. HR had just fired me and looked pleased with herself. I smiled and handed over the property deed. An hour later, the company called in a panic asking why there was an eviction notice on their door with a repossession order. Vanessa Sinclair, the VP of HR, had only been here 8 months. She said, "We'll need your badge, your keys, and any company-owned assets immediately," like she was ordering lunch.
Calm.
Efficient. Like firing me after 19 years was just another task. I reached into my bag and placed my access badge on the table. Then I laid out 17 keys, each labeled in my handwriting: server room, roof access, electrical panel. I set them down slowly. Vanessa smiled wider. She thought she'd won. Then I slid a thick manila envelope across the table, sealed with red wax. I said, "You asked for all company assets. That's the deed to the building." Her smile vanished. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. I leaned back and said, "You're sitting in it. And your lease expired 2 weeks ago." The lawyer beside her opened the envelope and started shaking. "My name is Elena Frost, and this is what happens when a company forgets who owns the ground it stands on." But this didn't start in the conference room. It started at 6:30 that morning, hours before they decided I was disposable. I arrived like I had for 19 years, early and alone, with a toolbox older than most employees. My coffee was still hot. The parking lot was empty except for the CEO's Tesla. Greg Callahan liked people to think he worked harder than everyone else. I unlocked the side door with the brass key I'd carried since 2004. The building was quiet, peaceful. I went straight to the basement. There was a small leak near the boiler I'd noticed on Friday. Leaks always get worse if ignored. I fixed it. At 6:47, I heard footsteps upstairs. My phone buzzed. A calendar invite. Quick sync. Conference room C, 10 a.m. From Vanessa. No explanation. I knew what that meant. I'd seen it happen to others. I told myself I was different. I wasn't just an employee. I was the one who kept the building running. In 2004, Titan Dynamics was 6 people in a broken warehouse. Greg had no money, no credit, no landlord willing to take a chance. I used the life insurance payout for my husband David to buy the building outright. $50,000. Everything we had. I leased it to the company at cost. No profit. Just taxes and maintenance. Greg said it was temporary. That was 19 years ago. No one ever asked about the deed. They assumed. I never forgot. Later that morning, I heard 2 young employees in the break room laughing about layoffs, calling people dead weight. I said nothing. I went to my office. On my desk was a photo of David and me in front of the building the day we bought it. He died 6 years ago. Work became my refuge. At 9:50, I walked to conference room C. Vanessa and a lawyer were waiting. She talked about strategic adjustments and slid a severance folder toward me. My name was spelled wrong. 19 years, and they couldn't spell it right. The lawyer asked again for my badge, keys, and company property. So I gave them everything, including the one thing they never knew I had. All of it official. All of it legal. All of it mine. Vanessa leaned closer to the lawyer, her glossy nails tapping the table. "This can't be right," she said. "There has to be a mistake." "There isn't," I replied. The lawyer looked up at me, pale. "You're saying you own this property?" "I'm saying exactly that." He adjusted his tie, trying to stay calm. "Even if this document is valid, you can't evict a tenant without notice and legal process." I leaned forward. I gave notice. 3 times. June 10th, June 25th, July 10th. Emails sent to Greg Callahan, Finance and Facilities. Subject line: Lease renewal required. Action needed by July 15th. I have read receipts for all of them. Vanessa's face flushed. "That's impossible." "Would have what?" I cut in. Responded? "Taken it seriously? You didn't. The lease expired August 15th. You've been operating without an agreement since then." The lawyer reread the deed. I saw it click. "Section 9B, he said. "That's right. Renewal requires written notice from the lessee 30 days before expiration. You missed it. Which means I can terminate tenancy and reclaim my property. Vanessa's hands shook as she checked her phone. I never saw those emails. You weren't on the list, I said. You've only been here 8 months. Greg was. Finance was. Facilities was. They ignored it. I stood up. One more thing. Suite 328. The back office. You've been subletting it to a crypto consultant named Blake Hartman for 18 months. Did Greg tell you? The lawyer went white. The lease forbids subletting without written approval. Greg never asked. I never approved. That's a material breach. Even if you had renewed, I'd still have grounds to terminate. Vanessa stared at me. This is insane. No, I said. This is business. You wanted strategic adjustments. You just made the biggest one of your career. I walked to the door. Wait, Vanessa snapped. You can't leave. You don't need anything from me anymore, I said. I returned all company assets, including the one you forgot you didn't own. As I stepped into the hallway, she shouted that this wasn't over, that they had lawyers and resources. I turned back. Go ahead. But you've got 30 days. I walked away. The hallway felt too bright. My heart was pounding. I passed offices full of people who had no idea what was coming. I reached the elevator as my knees gave out. I rode down to the garage and sat in my truck, hands shaking. What did I just do? I just evicted an entire company. 230 employees. Families. Mortgages. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls. 1 from Greg. I ignored them and opened my lease folder. The emails were there. All ignored. I saved screenshots. Then I called Marcus Delgado. He answered immediately. I handed them the deed, I said. Silence, then a low laugh. You actually did it. How'd they react? Vanessa nearly fainted. The lawyer looked sick. Did you mention the sublease? Yes. Good. That seals it. You won. It didn't feel like winning. It felt like falling. What if I made a mistake? You didn't, Marcus said. They did. 19 years ago when they forgot who owned the building. 2 months ago when they ignored your notices. This morning when they fired you. The eviction notice is filed. They'll get it within the hour. 30 days to vacate. No judge will side with them. I hung up and sat there until my heart slowed. A text came in. You made a huge mistake. I blocked it. Another text. Greg wants to meet tomorrow. I didn't reply. I drove home. The building stood behind me, solid. It had always been mine. I just hadn't claimed it. At home, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I stared at photos of David. I whispered that I didn't know if I'd done the right thing. My phone buzzed again. Filed and stamped. Eviction live. You're a savage. I didn't feel like one. I opened an old shoebox filled with letters from the early days. Elena, you saved us. We couldn't have done this without you. You're the heart of this company. I read them slowly, one by one, realizing something simple and painful. I had always been the foundation. They just forgot. I sat there on the edge of the bed with the letters spread across my lap, paper yellowed with age, Greg's handwriting rushed and uneven, full of promises that felt heavy now. Back then we were building something together, at least that's what I thought. I folded the letters back into the box and closed the lid. The past didn't need defending. It already told the truth. I stood up, walked to the window, and watched the afternoon light stretch across the lawn. For the first time in years, there was nowhere I had to be. No alarms to set. No boilers to check. No emergencies waiting for me to solve them. The thought scared me more than the eviction ever had. My phone rang again. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then again. And again. I turned the phone face down on the counter and made myself a sandwich, even though I wasn't hungry. I ate it slowly, standing at the sink, listening to the house creak the way it always did when the sun shifted. Around 4 o'clock there was a knock at the door. Sharp. Official. I opened it to find a courier holding a clipboard. He asked my name. I confirmed it. He handed me an envelope and asked for a signature. Titan Dynamics logo in the corner. All ready. I signed, closed the door, and opened it at the table. A cease and desist letter. Threatening language. Bold font. demands that I halt all eviction proceedings immediately. I read it once, then twice, then set it aside without reacting. Fear would come later if it wanted to. For now, there was clarity. At 5:30, my phone rang again. This time it was Marcus. "They're scrambling," he said. "Greg's in full damage control. Emergency board meeting. They're talking about injunctions." I smiled faintly. "Let them talk. They don't have a leg to stand on." He agreed. "We'll respond tomorrow. Tonight, rest. You've earned it." After I hung up, I went outside and sat on the porch steps. The air smelled like cut grass and summer dust. A neighbor waved. I waved back. Life was still happening. The world hadn't ended. It had just shifted. That night I slept for 10 hours straight. No dreams. No alarms. When I woke up, my phone had 14 missed calls. I ignored them all and made coffee. At 9:30, Marcus called again. "Temporary injunction denied," he said. "Judge reviewed the filings. Lease expiration is clear. Sublease breach sealed it. They're officially on the clock." I closed my eyes and let the relief wash through me. "What about the employees?" I asked. "That's on them," he said. "Titan will have to relocate or negotiate. And they will negotiate. Trust me." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an email. From Greg. Subject line: "We need to talk." I stared at it for a long moment before opening it. His tone was different now. Softer. Almost familiar. "Elena, I never knew. If I had known about the lease issues, this never would have happened. We value you. We can fix this." I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another email arrived. Then another. Offers. Apologies. Explanations. I deleted them all. At noon, Marcus called again. "They want to meet. Neutral location. Mediation. They're prepared to offer a buyout." I laughed, a real laugh, the kind that surprised me. "A buyout? For my own building?" He chuckled. "That's how desperate they are." "What do you want to do?" I thought about the building. The halls. The basement. The boiler. 19 years of my life. "I don't want it back," I said. "Not like that." "Then name your terms." That afternoon I took a walk around the neighborhood, letting my thoughts settle. I realized something simple. I didn't want revenge. I wanted closure. I wanted fairness. I wanted acknowledgement. When I got home, I sat at the table with a notepad and wrote out exactly what that meant. Fair market value for the property. Relocation assistance for displaced employees written into the agreement. Public acknowledgement of my ownership and role in the company's survival. No NDA. No silence. When I finished, I felt steady. I sent the terms to Marcus. He responded almost immediately, bold. Clean. Reasonable. They'll choke on it, but they'll accept. The next day, the meeting happened without me. I didn't need to be there. By evening, Marcus called with the result. They accepted every term. Signed. Funds would transfer within 10 business days. I sat down slowly, absorbing it. It was done. Titan Dynamics would move. The employees would be supported. The building would change hands again, this time on my terms. That night I opened a bottle of wine David and I had been saving for something special. I poured one glass and raised it toward his photo. "We did good," I said. Weeks later, I drove past the building one last time. The logo was already coming down. Trucks lined the street. People carried boxes. Life moving forward. I didn't stop. I kept driving. I enrolled in a community workshop on historic property restoration. I started volunteering with a local trade school, teaching young women how to fix what others overlook. Sometimes people recognized my name. Sometimes they didn't. Either way was fine. For the first time since David died, my life wasn't defined by maintenance or obligation. It was defined by choice. And every morning when I woke up, there was no badge to clip on, no keys weighing down my bag, no one mistaking my silence for weakness. I owned my ground, and finally, I was standing on it for myself. The sale closed quietly on a Thursday morning, no ceremony, no handshake photos, just a confirmation email, and a number in my bank account that didn't feel real even as I stared at it. I expected fireworks or relief or some grand emotion, but what I felt was calm, the kind that settles in after a long storm finally passes. I went for a drive that afternoon, not to anywhere specific, just down roads I hadn't taken in years. I realized how small my world had been when everything revolved around one building and one company that stopped seeing me as human long before they stopped needing me. At a stoplight, my phone buzzed. A message from Marcus letting me know the Relocation Assistance Fund for the employees had been finalized and publicly acknowledged in the agreement. Titan's press release would go out the next day. They wouldn't name me directly, but they wouldn't erase me either. That mattered more than I thought it would. When I got home, I opened the windows and let the evening air move through the house. I started sorting through things I'd ignored for years. Old manuals, broken tools I kept meaning to fix, boxes labeled someday. I donated most of them. Keeping everything had started to feel like fear instead of memory. The next morning, my name was everywhere in quiet ways. Industry blogs. Local business news. People calling me the mysterious landlord, the forgotten founder, the woman who outplayed corporate HR. They got parts of it wrong, but they got the heart right. I didn't correct them. I didn't need to. A week later, a former Titan employee knocked on my door. She looked nervous, clutching a folder to her chest. She told me the relocation assistance had helped her family bridge the gap until she found new work. She thanked me. I hugged her before I could stop myself. After she left, I cried for the first time since the conference room. Not from sadness, but from release. The months that followed were quieter than I expected. I painted the porch. I fixed the loose step myself. I planted tomatoes and actually remembered to water them. I started sleeping better. One afternoon, Greg emailed again. Not with demands or apologies, just a simple message. I should have done better by you. I hope you're well. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. Some things didn't need answers. I took a short trip out of state, something David and I used to talk about but never did because there was always a pipe to fix or a meeting to attend. I stood on a trail, overlooking a wide valley, and felt small in a good way. Nobody needed anything from me there. I wasn't responsible for holding anything together. When I got back, I accepted a part-time advisory role with a nonprofit that helps small businesses secure fair leases and avoid predatory agreements. I taught them what to look for, what questions to ask, how to protect themselves before they were too deep to escape. It felt right, like using what I'd learned without letting it use me anymore. Sometimes people asked if I missed Titan. I told them the truth. I missed who I was when I believed in it. I didn't miss who it asked me to become. One evening, as the sun dipped low, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and watched the streetlights flicker on. My phone was silent. My hands were steady. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like a threat or a burden. It felt open. And as I sat there, grounded and certain, I knew one thing without doubt. I hadn't taken anything from that company. I had only reclaimed what was always mine, including myself.